on, as Rich referred to it, the dark side. When I was on the dark side, the side I'm on now was the dark side, so they swapped over. How many people here are publisher side? So what I thought I would do today, if the slides don't come on, is sort of, I was thinking about it last night, and if I knew 12 months ago what I knew today about how an agency works or how a big buying group like Group M works, would I have done my role at News Digital Media any differently? So the last role I had there, I was head of sales for NDM. And the answer is absolutely, because I spent 11 years working for a fantastic company. But what happens after 11 years, you become a little bit institutionalized and you live within the bubble of the organization you work in. And that happens with Fairfax, with Nine, with Seven, with News, and you have to be like that, because you have to be passionate about your brand, you have to live your brand, and you have to make sure that at all times you're putting your best foot forward in the agencies. But when you take a step out of it, and particularly when you go over to agency side, you see a whole new world. So when I came on board as head of digital, and my role at Group M encompasses three main areas. One is trading, so replicating what James has done for the last 4 or 5 years really successfully, but doing that in digital. Search, and also launching our DSP, which some of you might be familiar with, which I'll go into a bit more detail later on. But I spent the first 2 weeks still with my sales director hat on, looking through who got what money, and then spent the next week ringing all the media buyers up saying, "You lying bastard, 3 weeks ago you told me we had 100% market share on this." And if anyone would have asked me how many people I was, or my team at News were competing against, I'd have said, I could probably name about 20, and I reckon there's probably been about 30 who are out there. The biggest surprise I got was when I looked at the numbers as to how many people we actually dealt with in terms of booked media last year. It was nearly 300. Now, I've worked in the Australian industry for 11 years, and I would have struggled to name more than 30. So that was a massive surprise for me, and probably the first learning in terms of what I would have done differently. So for those of you on publisher side, I'd be pretty confident that your sales director or GSM or sales manager has a meeting target for you to achieve every week. Some it's 5, some it's 10, some it's 15, some it's 20. And I'd imagine most of you on agency side know when a rep's ringing because they've got to tick their quota off and say, "Oh, I've been into Mindshare this week, I've been into Group M this week." So the first thing I would say is challenge your manager on that premise. And if they're asking you to do 4 meetings a week or 5 or 10, you should be going back and saying to them, "I can't do 10, I can't do 5, but I can do 2. And these are the 2 that I can do and get the best benefit." Because all you're going to do long term, and I'm sure the agency people will agree, you're going to piss your media buyer off because you're pestering them. You're not adding anything into the relationship. So the first thing I would do is look at the call rate you're expected to achieve every week, every month, every quarter, and question that. What is the measurement of success in the relationship that you have with your media buyer? And sit down and talk to them. Understand what spots they have every day, every week, every month to actually come downstairs or book a meeting room and see you. That's the first thing. The second thing I would really think about is, in terms of your interaction with the media buyer, as James has just said, you know, when I started 20 years ago, you could absolutely guarantee 10 meetings a week. No problem at all. Over the last few years, that's decreased more and more and more. If we booked media, this is just digital media, with 275 vendors last year, there's probably another 200 who are trying to get in. So if you're a media planner buyer on a client like Dell or P&G, or we've got Unilever, we've got some amazing brands at Group M, and every single media owner in Australia has those brands in their sites. So the same thing happens every Monday morning. At 9 o'clock, every sales team goes into its meeting, and every manager, every GSM says, "Right, what are we going to do this week? I want you all out, I want you on those phones, I want your diaries filled, I want to make sure you're selling NDM or Fairfax or 9MSN. So about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, what happens in the agencies? The phones start ringing. Okay? Now, sometimes it's leaving a message, sometimes it's messenger, sometimes you get through. But ultimately, the time the media buyer has got to devote to the salesperson is becoming smaller and shorter and shorter and shorter. So what you've got to make sure, when you get that window, every interaction you have is a good interaction. And success for me would be every time your media buyer goes back to his or her desk, they go, you know what, I've just learned something I didn't know. And you always send through a meeting invite, probably for an hour. Do you actually need an hour? You know, I'm going to talk for 15 minutes. I'm pretty confident I can get across everything that I want to get across. Most times when you meet up with your media planner buyer, there's one thing that you want to discuss. Once a month or once a quarter, you might be doing a showcase or a workshop, or we're launching these new sites or new magazines or papers or whatever it is. But most times when you meet up with your media planner buyer, you're there to talk about one particular thing. So make the most of that space. And you know, I think it'd be pretty powerful if you said to your media planner buyer, every time I see you, I only want 15 minutes of your time. That's it. And in that 15 minutes, I get the message across in terms of what I want to talk to you about, and I'll make sure that you walk away from that meeting with the knowledge of, okay, that was a good 15 minutes of my time. And I think if you can aspire to that and achieve that, the next time you call up, the next time you send an email, the next time you're on Messenger and say, Mike, I want to come and see you, the likelihood of you getting in is much higher than the other 300 people who are going through. The other big sort of learning for me, most of you have been into the Group M building. So we've got the 4 agencies in there, and downstairs is the coffee shop. And when you got in there in the morning, you just see tens and sometimes hundreds of reps all milling around and buying coffee and doing all this stuff. And you know, most of them have got good relationships or strong relationships. But the thing that always goes through me, what really stands you out? What is it as a rep that stands you out amongst the 300 other people who walk into that foyer every single day? And it's not for me to tell you that, but it's something you should certainly ask yourself. One, in terms of the brand that you represent. So what is it about your brand that's going to be different from, so if you're Fairfax, what is it that really differentiates you from news? If you're Yahoo, what is it with ngen, etc., etc., etc. It doesn't really matter what the medium is, but what is your point of difference? What is the thing that stands you out more than anything else? Then secondly, in terms of your own personal brand, so you've got the brand of your company, then think about your own personal brand. What is it that you've got that no one else has? And the same thing applies if you're on agency side as well. It's a very competitive landscape. You know, there's heaps of people, sort of 20, 25, 30, who are all aspiring to be client service directors or heads of strategy, and all those roles you aspire to be. There's probably a list of 10, 15, 20 people who've all got their eye on that role. So your own personal brand becomes really important. And I only caught the end of what Richard was going through, but you know, looking at where your strengths and weaknesses are is the first part of that. And a tip to the guys on the sales side, do that for your media buyers. Now, I doubt your media buyers will let you do a psychometric test on them, but you might be able to apply what you know about them already in a similar way. And think about, well, what are their strengths and weaknesses? What are the things that they're more passionate about? Are they more analytical? You know, what turns them on? Is it seeing spreadsheets? Is it seeing the ROI, that sort of stuff? Or is it someone who's more creative? Someone who's more left-brain? Someone who really wants to see big ideas? Someone who wants to be famous in their agency or famous with their client? Because there's a lot of competition on the media floor. So again, if you can try and work out who you're talking to, the average rep would probably deal with what? 10 media buyers from different agencies through the week. Now, you're not telling me every media buyer is exactly the same sort of person. So my advice is to do something similar like that. Look at all the contacts you have within an agency group and bracket them. Are they creative? Are they analytical? Are they more social? Am I better taking them out of their environment? Will a meeting be more productive if I bring them over to my office, take them outside, take them for a coffee, or do they need to do in their office, very agenda driven, etc., etc. And I'm telling you, once you do that, you'll learn a lot about yourself, your clients, and you'll maximise your time a lot more. I was trying to remember what else going on, so excuse me for one second.
It's a shame of really good pictures.
Yeah, I'll send it through. How are we for time? 5 minutes?
Yeah.
So, one of the things I put in here is future-proof yourself. And what I mean by that, is, I was really lucky. I sort of fell into digital in 1996. So I'm sort of a digital native, so to speak. I sold my first banner in '97. Unfortunately, I sold my next one in 2001, which was a bit of an issue for my boss. But at the time, it was really exciting. It was really new, and it was certainly, the dawn of this new media. And we were walking around saying there'll be no newspapers by the year 2000 and all this sort of stuff. Now that's not happened, but it's happening slowly. And what it's given me a real advantage in is being at the start of something new. So whether it was at News or whether it was at Group M, it's really helped my career. Now the role of a media buyer and the role of a media rep is changing beyond all recognition. For the last 30 years, it's pretty much remained the same. The only big changes, as James has said, as I said, is that the time you've got to spend with them is less and there's more competition. But traditionally the role has remained the same. With the advent of new technologies, with the advent of things like DSPs, digital targeting, Group M are leading the charge across the MFA to almost automate TV buying. That will have fundamental repercussions to our business and the way we transact. That means it will absolutely impact the way you as a media rep act as well. So you need to be able, during the week at some stage, to put some time away to familiarise yourself with what's happening in your industry. Because if you're not, someone else is. So, speak to your GSM, speak to your manager, if you're an agency side, speak to your client service director or whoever it is. But, I would really recommend you fence off some time in your week to familiarise yourself with changes in technology. So whether that's, I can send a list through of 20, 30 blogs that I would recommend you read. You're probably doing this already. Different people to follow on Twitter, different magazines to read. You need to future-proof yourself, because the days of being the TV rep or the TV buyer, the days of being the radio rep, the radio buyer, the print, the digital, is coming to an end. The fundamental biggest change will be how you use technology. The one thing that drives Group M, the one thing that James is really spearheading, is the data that we have access to, whether that be through digital buys or TV or outdoor, or whatever it is. So those changes will absolutely impact in everyone's career over the next 5, 10, 15, 20 years. And if you want a long-term career in media, and I fully recommend that you do, and the stuff that the MFA are doing is just incredible, you need to future-proof yourself. So look through your diary over the last month and think about how much time you devoted to learning about your industry. Because that will be the difference when you're sat down waiting for that next job, which will get at you or not. And I really believe that, because we're really busy. You always put stuff off. People send you links through, you should read this. I'll get to that, I'll get to that, I'll get to that. And you know what? You never do. And by the time you do, it's probably a bit too late. So my last piece of advice is look at your diary, put some time aside, speak to your manager and say, look, I want an hour a week where I'm going to learn about my industry, and we're all going to benefit from that. And it'll take a pretty bad manager to knock that back. So those are sort of the 5 things. Competition for the dollar. It's as fierce as it's ever been. So if you're on the media side, you've got to work 20 times harder, and that's just going to remain the same. Can you be all things to all people? If you look after a big network and you're trying to sell 30 sites or 30 magazines or 100 TV stations, it's not going to impact everyone, so make sure you're talking to the right person about the right thing. Every interaction, a good interaction, so the media buyer walks away going, you know what, that was a good 15 minutes of my time, and the future-proof yourself. So the slides were amazing, honestly. I'm sorry about that, but look, if you want to...
private show at the end, if anyone wants to see.
Yeah, absolutely. So thanks for your time, and best of luck.